I was watching a video the other day, and it was about a guy that bought an AR and, you know, showing off his new purchase. And I read one of the posts, and it said, "Be sure not to dry fire because you'll wreck it." Well, I started thinking, you know, why are people so, I don't know, have such a stigma about dry firing a weapon? And so I did a little research and found out that there is a reason you don't want to dry fire, but it's not a universal reason. Some firearms you don't want to dry fire, and some firearms the manufacturer even says dry fire away. In fact, the AR, there are a lot of videos and a lot of training programs out there that teach you to dry fire your weapon to practice trigger control. So first things first, I wanted to dispel the myth, so to speak, about dry firing an AR. Now this is AR only. The firing pin mechanism is inside the carrier, and I'll drop it out here. This is the firing pin. Now, two issues can be taken as to why people say don't dry fire it. One is that the firing pin, if you don't fire it into a cartridge, the end of the pin has nothing to hit against, so you get the full force of the hammer hitting the back of the firing pin onto whatever it hits against in the carrier. And consequently, I'll put a picture up, but in here there's a ring that stops the firing pin from falling all the way through, and you can see, if this doesn't come out, I'll put a picture up, there's a little black mark where that firing pin is hit. So and there's only about, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's only about maybe a 1/16 of an inch of travel. And the other thing that somebody else mentioned, not the same guy, was that, yeah, especially don't dry fire it with the low, with the upper off. And I'm here to show you, you can do it. It is not recommended to do it a lot, but it's not going to wreck your gun if you do it. So here you go. I'm going to do it again. Some of you guys are probably screaming, "No, don't do it," but here it is. It's not going to wreck your rifle. Now, what does happen is, since this is steel and this is aluminum, you may get some, some mashing or something like that, but that's, if you did it like 1,000 times a day or something, you might wreck it. But just doing it once or twice by accident is not going to wreck the weapon. You can see in the face of the hammer where it's been hitting on the firing pin. So even if you hit that firing pin with or without a charge, you're going to get wear on the hammer face. That's just the way it works. I've heard videos, or heard of videos, and seen posts on message boards that say, it is okay to dry fire your AR. So let's move along. Now, what I think where it comes from is, back in ye olden days when they had muskets or muzzleloaders, there is a percussion cap system where the hammer doesn't hit a firing pin per se, but it hits a percussion cap that sits on this little nipple. So obviously, if you, and this is a stainless steel nipple, this is a more relatively modern muzzleloader. So, but this is probably a carbon steel, and this is a stainless steel. So if you dry fired it too many times, you're gonna mash this nipple down. So yes, it's not going to wreck your weapon if you do it once or twice. And by the way, this nipple is replaceable, so if I was stupid enough to hit it so many times that it mashes out or mushrooms out that nipple, and I can't get my percussion cap in there anymore, I can replace the nipple. I'm not saying to go out and do it, but if you happen to do it once or twice, it's not the end of the world. Now, there are some good reasons for modern firearms, especially the your rimfires or 22 long rifles, not to dry fire, because the reason is the way the firing pin is set up. The firing pin is more of a knife and not a discrete point. And this is my nylon 66, but show you right here. Here's my barrel. Here's the shell casing, and I don't know if you can see it, but here's the movement. I don't have a spring in my firing pin, so here's the movement of the firing pin. This is a spent casing that I hit, so there's two hits on here, but you can see where that's where the firing pin hits on a rimfire. Makes a nice little knife edge, little indentation. But still, if you look at the barrel, there is a little indentation at the top there where I didn't own this gun. I'm not the original owner, but where somebody or myself have dry fired it, and the firing pin has made a little dent there at the top. Now I don't know if that's from dents from hitting it with or without the spent casing, or with or without the casing, but here I'll dry fire it now, and flip this little deal over, and you'll see even with the without a casing, that firing pin does not touch the barrel. So, you know, that shouldn't damage the barrel. So I don't know, but there is you know, I do confess there is a dent there for some reason or another, maybe over years of shooting it with the casing in there. The other concern might be where this is essentially the hammer. You see that little oval shape there? That's where the hammer has struck the back of the firing pin. So, you know, that could be a concern where you could work harden the hammer. But again, this rifle is over 30 years old, so after 30 years of hammering, I don't see any evidence of work hardening or anything like that. So I don't think it's a real concern. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. But again, with anything once or twice, it's not going to kill you. It's not going to wreck the firearm. Now we get into Centerfire pistols, and the first is my Taurus 357. Again, I've had this for over 20 years. Yes, I've dry fired, and you know, I'm dry firing it now, and no, I haven't wrecked it. So if you look inside, this little hole there is where the firing pin comes out. But it's got what's called a drop hammer, little mechanism in there. See it going up and down? So when you pull the trigger, the hammer drops so fast that it doesn't give it time, even if you release the trigger, for it to go down fast enough before the hammer strikes that drop hammer and advances the pin. So you see if you can see the firing pin coming through the other side. So you see that coming through the other side? Alright? That's with my finger on the trigger. See that coming through? So the travel is maybe a 16th of an inch at best. So now I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go of the hammer, and watch that little thing. I'm going to let go of the trigger. It goes away. So now, even when I move the hammer back and forth, the drop hammer is down, so it doesn't engage the firing pin. So with this type of setup, again, you're contacting the drop hammer, and show you the oh my god, I'm pointing at you. You can see the little bit of wear on the hammer, because when you dry fire, it's this portion of the hammer that contacts you know, up there on the top above the drop hammer. Without a cartridge inside, the firing pin doesn't engage the primer. You know, at best you're going to get a deceleration of the hammer for 1/16 of an inch at best into soft brass, and you know, the rest of the momentum of the hammer is still going to hit contact the top of I guess you can call it the anvil, and you know, again, I've had this for over 25 years or 20 years, and dry fired tons of times, and it still works. Modern firearms have better steel, so that's probably part of the reason why dry firing is not an issue with modern centerfire firearms. Here's another example of a centerfire firearm. This is, of course, a P95, Ruger P95 semi-auto, and it's also got a drop hammer. So you see here, that's the firing pin, and it's got a decock. So what happens is when you pull down the decock, it drops the drop hammer. So even though the hammer has hit, it won't engage the firing pin. So anyway, when the hammer hits the back of the anvil, or the, you know, where the firing pin is, you know, it's going to hit the firing pin and the surrounding metal. So you can kind of see the shiny parts right up here, where there's some wear up there. But I don't know how old this pistol is. I got it used, and you can see some wear, but I'm sure it's been dry fired once or twice. I know I've dry fired it several times. So here's the hammer, and it's, you know, no worse for wear. So dry firing the automatic pistol, Ruger P95, if you want to be specific, is not a problem. So now we move on to the rimfire automatic pistol. This is a rimfire Walther P22, for those wondering, and it has the same similar type of, you know, hammer setup and firing pin mechanism as the Ruger. But regardless, I've dry fired this thing several times. I've owned this. I am the first owner. I've had this gun for about 5 years, and you know, it's got double strike capabilities. I'm dry firing it now. I've dry fired it before. Not a big deal. You know, this one has a feature where you have to have the magazine in, or else it won't dry fire. But you know, magazine in, dry fire, and again, it's hitting the hammer and probably the anvil here. It's on safe actually, so it's hitting the safety bar, and when you dry fire in that condition, you know, you're hitting on the ridge of that bar. So yeah, if you did it a couple thousand times, it may damage it, may put a little line or something on your hammer. But you know, again, you know, how many thousand rounds are you going to put through your times you're going to dry fire this thing? I don't know. That's up to you. Think about it. The other thing we didn't talk about were shotguns, and from what I've read on the message boards, the old shotguns had probably not so good metallurgy, so the firing pins would get brittle and would come apart. But of course, you know, old shotguns could be 100 years old, could be 30 years, I don't know. I don't know the specifics of the shotguns they were talking about, but again, bottom line, read your manufacturer's warranty or instructions, and if you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. This has just been my experience with dry firing, so, you know, if you feel comfortable dry firing, dry fire. If you don't, but, you know, I wouldn't use a blanket statement saying you shouldn't dry fire any firearm, because actually some firearm manufacturers write in their instructions that dry firing is perfectly acceptable. So for all you dry firing Nazis out there, you know, it depends on the gun. It really does. And it depends on the type of firing mechanism you have, whether you know, should or shouldn't dry fire, or whether it's not a big deal at all. So that's my 2 cents on dry firing. If you have any comments, questions, you know, post them in the comment section. And you know, if you know of any other firearms that don't have a problem with dry firing, or do have a problem with dry firing, you know, by all means, please post a video. And with that, that's all I got. See you later.